I'm an epiphany chaser. I love science books. A lot of people would find them boring, but yeah, it can be like a little boring and it can be a little frustrating or you're not getting it or whatever. And then suddenly something clicks and you experience that epiphany where you like just see something about life just
You get out of
completely
the
differently.
Welcome to Overeducated and Underemployed. This week we've got Shane Mauss, comedian, podcaster, fucking hilarious dude. Really enjoyed hanging out with him, talking to him. He's got 2 new specials coming out that he filmed at Meow Wolf in Denver, Colorado. Meow Wolf is an amazing art collective. Check their stuff out. His first of the 2 is out February 18th, just in a couple of weeks here. So check that out on his website. There's a link in the description of this episode. If it's anything like the show I saw the night before this interview, man, y'all are in for a treat. He was so funny. And I've seen some clips from the special as well. It's great. February 18th on shanemauss.com. There's a link in the description. Check it out. This is a long episode, clocking over 2 hours. We talked about everything from his upbringing to the Creation Museum and about a movie that was made like 15 years ago called Flockadoos. And I think a combination of what Shane was talking about, selection bias, combined with like time, and I think a conscious effort for scientists to be better communicators over the last 15 years or so has made that movie pretty much null and void at this point. We got into all kinds of stuff. I hope you really enjoy it. If you like the new theme song, make sure to check out the new single by Sloan Brothers. It's out everywhere. The new album, Love and Other Diagnosis, is available to order on vinyl on Bandcamp. There's a link in the description. Thanks for tuning in. We got a lot of really cool stuff coming up this season continually, so hit that subscribe button. I am honored to have Shane Mauss on Overeducated and Underemployed.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Thanks for being here.
I'm pumped, man.
Yeah, this is awesome because I think we have more in common than I initially thought, which is, it's like somebody like you do so many different things. You have your fingers in so many different areas. And
I do.
It's and I like to try and diversify what I'm doing as well. But I'm going to start with the question that I ask everybody on here, and then I'm going to do a follow-up that I do with comedians. But what's the first song that you remember loving as a kid?
Oh, man. That's a good question. MC Hammer, Can't Touch This? Was that what it was?
Yeah.
And then, yeah, that was, as a kid, I remember loving that. And then I didn't get into music. My first love so that was like, I was 4 or 5 or something like that. And then my next love was Weird Al.
Oh, yeah.
And so my parents didn't listen to music. Like, they didn't have music on and stuff. And for whatever reason, like, I didn't get music. And I remember Weird Al's parody of Smells Like Teen Spirit.
Yeah.
When I heard that, I was like, wait, what is this real song? And then I listened to Nirvana for the first time, and I was like, oh my God. That was the first time that I found a band that I absolutely loved. And yeah, that changed everything, I think. And then, so I was like pretty old by the time I like got into music at all.
Yeah.
And then I was into like Soundgarden and Stone Temple Pilots and stuff at that time. And then I was into Nine Inch Nails, and then, because I was born in 1980s, these are like teenage years now, and then when I got into psychedelics, Pink Floyd became my favorite band. So it was like Nirvana, Pink Floyd, and then just once in a while I find something that I really, it's so few and far between and then when I find a band, I'm obsessed with them. So it was like Weezer was my first concert. White Stripes was like my second big concert. So I
White Stripes.
wasn't like a big concert goer. And then Aesop Rock, not Aesop Rocky, not ASAP Rocky. Aesop Rock is like the person who I'm absolutely just obsessed with. I just found out he has a new album out, and I just started listening to it. And Aesop's one of those people you got to listen like to an album like 20 times, and suddenly these like pieces you start putting stuff together, and his stuff's just so deep and dense and interesting and so intelligent, and so it's just constantly. I'm an epiphany chaser. I'll read like a lot of this. I love science books. A lot of people would find them boring, but yeah, it can be like a little boring, and it can be a little frustrating, or you're not getting it or whatever, and then suddenly something clicks and you experience that epiphany where you like just see something about life just completely differently.
Cave.
Exactly. And I have those when I listen to Aesop Rock. I have a lot of like epiphanies, and I think we have so much in common. It's funny, once I was doing a club and someone was like, "Hey, you know who you remind me of?" As I do a lot of indie venues and stuff, Aesop Rock, because he had been through there recently. Like, just the way you guys think about things, you're like really similar. I was like, "Oh, that is the best compliment you could have fucking given me." That's incredible.
And they didn't even know it. They didn't even know.
Know it. Didn't know it. It was like my hero, and just the weirdest. I just wrote like this a few months ago. I wrote like this 20-minute, like at least it could easily be 30-40 minute, like ridiculous beast of a bit about pinball, and it's so stupid. It's so stupid that it's so long, and it's just I kept going and going. And I like just that cracks me up, like a subject that like 1-2 jokes about pinball is the appropriate amount of pinball jokes. So anyway, I wrote all this, and then I was listening. I just discovered he had a new album, and he has this fucking song about pinball on it. I'm like, God damn it, how is this happening? We're just on the same wavelength.
I guess we're gonna be playing some pinball out in the arcade after this, because
I'm no good. I suck at it, but I'll play.
Yeah. I love pinball too.
I don't love pinball. I was actually writing a joke about how frustrating of a game it is. And then I like just did all this deep dive, and I found out pinball was illegal for 40 years. Yeah. And then oh my God. And then I saw like one of the worst, those bad movies like The Room or whatever, where people watch them because they're bad. Do you know that the song Pinball Wizard was a musical? Named Tommy, the Who.
I've seen Tommy. Yeah.
It's like the worst fucking
with Tina
movie.
Turner is the Acid Queen.
Yeah, like Jack Nicholson's in it.
That whole movie
I
is
forgot
just
about
so
the
crazy.
Tina Turner part.
Man. That movie's fucking crazy.
That movie's so insane. And
like, musically, I think it's a lot of fun.
Yeah,
like Elton John.
Elton John as the pinball like champion that gets beaten. Oh my God, it's so stupid.
That shit's crazy.
So I just went on the stupid deep dive. Sometimes I love just because a lot of my stuff is like I do a lot of, especially now that my psychedelic specials are coming out, I'm diving back into my science communication a lot more, and so I'm collaborating with a lot of different science groups with some different communication projects, and so because of that, like for a comedian, I'm doing like some pretty like serious work sometimes, and so to like just sit around writing the dumbest jokes I've ever written about pinball for a while is just like scratches that. I need to be silly too sometimes.
No, I definitely write some silly jokes, and I try not to get like super silly. If it goes there, but when I'm doing these interviews, I try to be as serious and engaging as possible. It's
fun to be silly too.
Yeah, for sure. But one thing that you said that I really relate to when I was a kid, I would get into Weird Al's parody and then go find the original. That was how I would get into music a lot. Like,
Weird Al's amazing.
I just had his guitarist for 43 years on this week.
Oh, that's incredible.
The week that we're talking now, not the week that this comes out. But
yeah.
And yeah, I've seen Weird Al 10 times.
Yeah,
live.
I saw him live like, I don't know, 15 years ago or something, and I was like, oh, Weird Al. Like, been off my radar in my adult life. And I was like, oh, I'll check that out. Saw the show. I was like, oh my God, this is incredible.
It's a multimedia extravaganza, man.
It's so good.
Fucking wild.
UHF is maybe my favorite comedy of all time. It's pretty close.
The theater I'm performing at tonight, in its old location, my daughter and I rented out the theater and showed UHF for, it was like probably her 10th birthday or 11th birthday or something. That's amazing. Like that. Showed it to a bunch of 5th graders. They all thought it was hilarious, but didn't understand. Like, they didn't know. A couple of them had maybe seen 1 or 2 of the things he's fucking. Yeah. But good God, it still killed like a group of kids that had didn't really know Weird Al, didn't know any of the movies he was making fun of really at all.
You get to drink from the fire hose. It's just, speaking of silliness, just pure silly. What a gem of a human being.
He really, really, truly. And I think it's also just a testament to how many people he's inspired to, because you're not the first person. I guess the cat's going to be on the podcast this week because I forgot to put them on the porch.
That's all right.
That's all right with us.
What's your cat's name again?
This is Pumpkin.
Pumpkin.
And I have jokes about her. She's very insecure.
Oh, she's cute. But, so, yeah, Weird Al.
Yeah, we rented out the theater, showed it. We made Twinkie Wiener sandwiches. Which...
That's some good dad shit.
They're disgusting.
Oh, yeah.
They're the most awful thing I've ever eaten.
It's part of the joke, yeah.
And he went vegan. I think that's why he went vegan.
Because he...
But so the follow-up question I have, and I usually save this only for comedians, but what's the first joke that you remember loving and maybe even retelling to your family or friends as a kid?
One that immediately comes to mind is, maybe because of the UHF reference, the Emo Phillips joke. It was something along the lines of, I love to go to the park, and I can't do an Emo Phillips impression, and watch all the kids run and scream and jump around, and they don't know I'm shooting blanks, which is, I don't think you can do that joke anymore. But I remember that was one of the first ones when I was like 10, 11 years old or something like that.
I've actually seen Emo open for Weird Al twice.
Oh, yeah, nice.
And me and my daughter got to meet him one night afterwards.
Yeah, I've met Emo.
Really amazing.
He's great.
Human being, yeah.
Yeah, I've met him several times.
Yeah, he's hilarious. So do you remember telling that joke to other people as a kid, or just like...
I do. Yeah, I remember that.
That's interesting.
Yeah. How about you?
For me, it was Who's on First, Abbott and Costello.
That
Loved
that
the
was
play on words. My grandfather showed it to me, and one of the only non-racist jokes he ever shared with me. And
yeah,
man, it tickled me in all the right ways. I recruited a friend of mine to redo it in front of the school for a talent show, and it was terrible, but I loved Abbott and Costello, and not their movies, but that one bit really. And I love baseball too, so I think that was part of it.
You know what joke as a kid that we had that kids these days, like I've asked my friends' kids if they have this joke like in their school, is the diarrhea jokes.
Oh, like running down the ladder?
And you feel something splatter, diarrhea. So now anytime I meet my friends...
Be making fun of a medical issue.
Yeah. So anytime my friends have kids, because it's like, you always want to like bond with your friends' kids if you can, but it's always like, oh, it's like, I don't know how to talk to
You
kids.
seem like you'd be the good weird uncle.
You try, and sometimes I'm like, it's funny trying to impress kids and being like, I'll get like socially insecure. I want to be cool. Come on, kid. And so that's how I attempt to be cool. Is I try to give the youngins the diarrhea song to go and tell all their friends at school, so they can be because kids don't have it, so they can be the ones to introduce it. You're going to be a hit at school.
You're creating class clowns across the nation.
You got to tell them every day. Just show up with a new banger, and the other kids don't know that these are just from the archives.
Man, the internet. I'm shocked with the internet that the diarrhea joke has not made it. It hasn't trickled down.
Yeah.
Sorry, that was I couldn't help it.
But I love it.
So, you already mentioned that your parents didn't really listen to music growing up. Were they also like not really exposing you to movies or TV, or was it? What was that like? What kind of upbringing did you have?
So my mom is just the cutest, sweetest, like most wholesome person. A little bit to a fault as the first kid, and a little bit like overprotective and stuff. As a kid, it drove me crazy.
Sure.
As an adult, it was nothing but pure love, and I had a very secure. I was cared for and loved, but I remember it was my mom's one of the bigger worry warts that you'll ever meet. And like I remember last time I was through Florida, I went out kayaking with some manatees, and I was telling my mom like I pet a manatee or whatever, and her first question was, "Oh, do they bite?" And it's just that's her first default reaction to everything. Like, is it
My
dangerous or whatever?
Is like I'm like, oh, that's illegal, man.
True.
Whatever.
But
all Floridians have pet a manatee at one point or another.
And so she tried to like really have strict rules with video games and movies and TV and what was allowed and what was appropriate, and I was always just very rebellious.
Were you allowed to play pinball?
Yes, I was allowed to play pinball. Yeah.
Where the line was,
once they made it legal, no, it lost the edge. Back when it was illegal, and you had a illegal pinball machine. I don't even know how you were getting one. There's like the pinball mafia or something. But oh man, you have an illegal pinball machine, you're fucking. That guy's cool.
The engineering that goes into those machines is
I actually just went to, where was I? In Seattle, they have this quote unquote pinball museum, and there's not so much information. There is some about each machine, but they have like a pinball machine from almost every year.
Oh wow!
Like some of the earliest ones, going back at least once they put the paddles in, and so I played every one, so you can see the way the designs changed. If you just start from the beginning, and in 4 hours or whatever, you can play like the whole history of pinball engineering.
That sounds so fun.
Yeah, it's actually, for someone that actually doesn't generally care for pinball, it was super fun.
There's this Atari collection that they put out that it's similar, but it's at home, where they take you through the history of Atari. You get to play each game, but they also have like historical material and interviews with the developers. And it's really, because a lot of the times there's old collections of games. They're just collections of old games that you're like, this sucks now.
Yeah.
But when you get all that extra context, I think it really helps you understand why it was fun then and what was fun about it. And
I just remember any friends that, and like I had the people that babysat me and like my best friends growing up had an Atari, and then my uncle had an Atari, and it was just like anytime I got a chance to play Atari, it was incredible. I can't imagine. It's got to be so hard to, as a parent these days, to get kids to play outside and stuff like that, because it's just like the games are incredible.
Outside too.
It is. It absolutely is.
It doesn't help that it's getting hotter and hotter, but
yeah.
So, good-natured but overprotective parent. Do you think that anxiety took some of that on yourself, or do you?
Oh, I just was like incredibly like rebellious.
Okay.
And so I got myself into, really in hindsight, an unnecessary amount of trouble, and I hated school, and my name was like always on the board. I was always in detention. I was exceptionally good at math and without even trying, and then but I paid no attention in school. So all the other classes I was so bad at, I was like grades behind in reading and stuff. So there was like regularly meetings because there wasn't as much like neurodivergent talk back then,
Right.
but it was like some people be like, oh, do we need to hold them back a grade? Do we need to put them in like the special ed with all the like troublemaker kids? And then the math teachers would have to come in and be like, no, he actually needs to be in advanced classes and not challenging him.
And probably just showing up around there.
Yeah. So it was like school was torture for me. And I'm thankful that I eventually got into, I'm an autodidact now. I love taking classes and things. Now I'm constantly taking online courses, and I have a science podcast, Here We Are, and I interview scientists all the time, and I get to learn so much. And so I look back, but I'm sure a lot of people wish they would have paid a little more attention in school or whatever, but it was what it was at the time. But I'm like, I have a broken like pinky knuckle right now from like mountain biking six weeks ago. It's my first time mountain bike. The first day was amazing, and then they're I think you could do like an advanced trail. Actually, you're really good. Like I always liked like extreme sports and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
That was just like I hated organized sports, and I loved things where you could like get hurt. Just like I was very reckless always, and I still am. So I have some like scar tissue and a kind of a bum foot that acts up like a few days every month and stuff. There can be some consequences to rebelling, and then sometimes some rebellions, some like default contrarianism stuff is just so immature.
Yeah, I've heard you talk about that before with Duncan. Just like when y'all were talking about rituals and how you abandoned being ritualistic.
Oh yeah. I never had any
like,
rituals.
The intentional nonconformity.
Oh, and my mom is just the cleanest, most organized, teetering on a little bit OCD when I was younger anyway. I think she's loosened up. I think it was like an outcome of the stress of being a mother, and also a lot of, she's from a small town and where everyone cares very much about what everyone else thinks of them, and living to be kind of people pleasing and everything. And so, boy, so I rebelled against that too, and now I'm just like such a messy fucking boy still. It's just so immature. I don't know how to cook. I can't clean up after myself for shit. And I just went the opposite direction. It's like, you know what? Actually, those were a lot of great qualities that I wish I would have taken to more. But I just had it in. My mom just had like a devilish little troublemaker that and the more she tried to contain it, the more rebellious I was, and it was like constant source of friction, my poor mother. But that's what it was like.
The tighter you close your grip, the more systems will slip through your fingers.
Yeah. It's funny because I know that I had one other friend whose parents were as strict as mine, or stricter, and he was the only person that I knew that was crazier than me in terms of like risk taking and whatnot. And then I had these friends that their parents seemed like they let them do whatever the hell they wanted to do, and they were the most well-behaved kids. And I think that I don't know how much there is in the way of like free like parenting classes and stuff, but I wish there was some more like 101.
It's easy to be well behaved when you don't have any rules, though.
Yeah.
Really. It's easy to stay out of trouble if you don't have any restrictions.
Yeah, there's nothing to rebel against.
Yeah. So at what point? So you hated school. You're not. Did you fit in? Did you feel like you had friends at all? Really? Or
I actually, in hindsight, it was like I actually did have a nice little group of friends. To me, I felt like unpopular. I was like the skinniest kid in school, and kids will always find a thing to pick on. And I have like my dad, and my dad's side of the family is like toward the quieter side, and so I definitely would have been voted like shyest kid in school. And so I was like very insecure, and I was tall and skinny, and so it was also like the short kids would want to fight me because of how skinny I was. They thought they'd have a chance. But then they get to fight a tall guy, and I got bullied. And it's also I remember bullying and picking on kids, and that's the shit that will like whatever kids bullied me, I could give a shit about. I was like, whatever, they were just kids. But when I bullied people, I can't fucking live with that shit. Like I've ran into some of the kids that I bullied in the past and apologized and made plenty of times in my adult life. I think a lot of the fucking problems with this modern world is just like these bullies with these bully mentality that like just refuse to like face like being critical of themselves, and seeing, oh, actually I was a piece of shit here and there and made these bad actions, and like
kind of self-reflection.
And so you have to like validate it by continuing to justify bullying and doubling down. And
no, I think you're absolutely right about that. And I
have a fucking bully dictator king.
Yeah,
you know?
Yeah, no, I think you're absolutely right. I think the reactionary nature of the way people interact with each other online.
Yeah.
First of all, I don't think it's like that in the real world most of the time. Like when I'm out there with real people, it's a very different thing than what you see online. But
yeah,
it's becoming more and more like online is becoming more and more like part of the real world too.
Yeah.
And the way that we treat each other is becoming more and more like that. And you're right. It's like the moment. I remember just a couple of weeks ago when there was the joke going around about how Mamdani was going to put Arabic numbers and make all New York City schools teach Arabic numbers. And some lady who's like a Democrat, like true blue Democrat lady on a friend of mine's wall was like, made some offhand comment about it. Like she thought it was like, but then she like tried to say, no, we shouldn't spread it because she was like, that's not true or something like that.
Yeah,
like trying to stand up for Mamdani.
Yeah.
That's not really, he's not really doing that. And then somebody was like, Arabic numerals are just like the numbers that we use all the time. Yeah, but if we spread this around, then they're going to use it and I'm like, why can't you just admit that you were wrong?
Yeah.
Why can't you just be like, oh, my bad.
Yeah.
My mistake.
Reactance, doubling down, lack of self-awareness. One of the things that one concept that I think quite a bit about is the is the evolution of self-deception. I spend a lot of time, so that the kind of my wheelhouse is in a lot of like my best interviews when I'm talking with people, when I'm like is thinking of the ways in which past pressures on our ancestors and through the course of evolutionary history have shaped our brains, has shaped various preferences and features that we are attracted to, may have been like indicators of health in the past and that sort of thing, and various social behaviors that we have. A lot of these drives that we had were because they were evolutionarily beneficial at some point, and our modern world's much different than it used to be. But so basically for human genes to spread, there's like kind of 7 different subselves of the mind that we really aren't like privy to, but there's tests that you can design to tease out these ideas. And this is like a imperfect categorization, but one of the ways that I like thinking about it is, there's a good book, The Rational Animal, that is, so you need like a survivor sub-self, you need the kind of like a night watchman of sorts, keep an eye out for surviving. There's an infectious disease sub-self, which is you go in like a public restroom or something, you go, oh, that's because ancestors that had an aversion to, say, poop or whatever, did better than ones that were attracted to it. And then you have, because we're social animals, so then every species also needs to find a mate, and then some species do some child rearing, which humans do, and then yeah, but like, a lot of fish just shoot out their eggs and never see their offspring. And then there's let's see, so attracting a mate retention. So because humans have some pair bonding and paternal care has been selected for over time, which is also pretty unusual in species. There's features that it takes one thing to pick up a lady, it takes another thing to hold on to one. Those are like different features.
Right. Yeah.
And then there's because we're social animals, there's an affiliative sub-self, and then there's a status recognizing sub-self, which is knowing, kind of sensing where you are in a social totem pole in different situations. So it's always my status while on stage is different than my status when I'm in a convenience store, which is different than my status when I'm like on a mountain bike course or something. Right, so this is always different, and the same person can be low on the totem pole working in the mailroom at their work, but then they're the best on the company softball team.
Yeah. I think about it as like a water bottle in Walmart versus a water bottle in the airport.
Yeah, sure.
It's like that bottle of Evian.
Yeah, the same bottle is worth more in different. And so that person, when they're was going to have more confidence and maybe call the shots on the softball court, but then that might be lower in confidence working in the mailroom or whatever. And so these are things that are always being adjusted, and there's all these interesting tests developed to tease these things apart. But so of these kind of subconscious drives, we can become aware of them, but there's a lot of work about self-deception. The ways in which our brains err aren't just random. We often err to the side of, for survival sub-self, you err to the side of caution. So you might not be accurately perceiving a threat, but the over cautiousness left more descendants than people that took too many risks, for example. And then this creates a spectrum, and then this is why there's varying personalities and everything, and there's been so many ecological changes in different environments, and humans are extremely adaptable, so a lot of these things are highly influenced by the environment and culture, more so in humans than in a lot of species that are a lot more fixed.
Yeah.
That have a very specific niche, like a sloth or something like that, that can't really...
Like a very specific biological place.
Yeah, you put them somewhere else, they're probably not going to do very well. And self-deception is really interesting because we're these social animals, and because status is something that can be valued, and there's sometimes some gender differences and various ways in which status might mean more in different situations. But because of this and being affiliative, the ability to sell yourself to others is something that is selected for. So having confidence and everything. And so there are subconscious features, and again, there's individual differences where plenty of people have insecurities in different domains, but quite testably, if you ask people, how good of a driver are you, how smart are you, how attractive are you, the average person embellishes by about 15-20%. And the idea is that, and then some people are way off the charts, and the idea is it's like just enough where it can help you get ahead a little bit in a social situation. If you have, so it's like you don't realize you're doing this, but you have a little more confidence in this situation, and that can keep you like moving forward through life a little bit. Like maybe seeing reality a little clearer would make it a little harder to get out of bed and to take a chance at something if you were seeing it more accurately. And so because you have this like slight delusion, it can actually work out numbers wise over time, as like evolution throws like a lot of spaghetti against the wall, that things that are just a little overly confident. And then the other thing is in terms of social manipulation. So say we're negotiating a deal, if I'm really genuine and I'm like trying to sell you something, it's going to be more believable to you, and you're going to be more inclined to buy it or pay more for whatever I'm trying to sell you. And so then you're trying to detect if I'm genuine or not. And so then there's these social features where some people might, like over time, you evolve ways to deceive, and then you evolve ways to detect deception. So much so that eventually some ways to deceive are hidden from our conscious awareness because it's easier to sell something when you believe it yourself.
Yeah,
so it's like these kind of lies that you tell yourself a little bit. And it's not necessarily even lies, it's just embellishments. But you're genuinely perceiving this product that you made as better than it is.
So there's a lot I want to teach.
Yeah. Were you able to follow everything?
No, for sure. And we're speaking the same language in a lot of this too, just because of my background in history of science and history of biology.
Yeah.
But what strikes me about a lot of what you were just saying too is like all of that, understanding all of that is crucial to being a comedian.
Yeah.
You have to have some self-deception that you're like, that people even want to listen to you talk by yourself on stage.
Yeah.
Like you have to, especially early on, I have to delude myself into thinking people actually want to hear what I want to say.
Yeah.
Or same with putting out something like this. It's like you have to believe this thing that may or may not be true.
Yeah.
You have to believe that what you're doing is worth people's time. But then you also have to be able to have that self-reflection to be like, maybe the real world isn't the place for me. Like the 9 to 5. At what point did you realize that and realize that you needed to pursue something different than, because I feel like this is what was going on. You already knew it in high school. You already knew it in school.
Oh, when I was 9 years old, a friend of mine had told me I should be a stand-up comedian, and I didn't tell anyone then, but it was like at the age when everyone was figuring out, oh, what are you gonna be when you grow up? We just graduated 4th grade. Time to make some big choices, and nothing seemed appealing to me. And I was raised really, by my standard, pretty strictly religious, I would say. Catholic. But my dad was Catholic, my mom was Lutheran too, and so it was, I think that they were more flexible in terms of denomination, just Christianity. But I had some questions about that, like very early on, in the same way that like everyone was like Packer fans and would get so excited. And I remember watching football and being like, I don't get what the fuss is about. Hey, as a kid, I was like, let's go outside and play sports. I want to play. Like watching like other people do the same thing and for hours and hours on end. I found out when I was like 5 that if I just rooted for the other team, that the Packers weren't playing, that the Packers were playing, it would drive my uncles like insane, and it just cracked me up so much that I could just push buttons that easily, and it was like fascinating to me. And so because of that, I remember around the same time that I started questioning Santa Claus, 4 years old or whatever even, it wasn't long after that I started being like, well, what is this stuff and how does this prayer is, so there's a thing, just listen. Wait a second, is this just like a story people are telling themselves?
I've always thought of Santa Claus as like God Jr.
Oh, yeah.
It's like you're
absolutely
just like getting them ready for somebody watching them all the time. And you're giving them the carrot before you give them the stick.
Yeah, and there's a lot of reasons why humans have been able to. There's a lovely book, which it's not the only take, and it's not a perfect take, but the book *Sapiens: A Brief History of Humankind* that makes a case for the evolution of cognitive features that allowed humans to cooperate in large numbers over subjective ideas, things that only exist in the human mind. So, like,
and he put that at like 250,000 years ago. Is that right? That we started to develop that?
I think he's speculating on that maybe there was this change during the cognitive revolution, which was around like 80,000 years ago or so. But yeah, so humans are like, so his case is around that. So humans have been around for about 300,000 years, and his take is that maybe what happened when there was like this explosion of new tools and stuff like that, it was something that, some sort of aspect of our cognition that had been selected for, that allowed for this, that took off.
Well, and the earliest tools are found in Neanderthal caves and things like that too. So like even and we were interbreeding with them a lot at that point.
Yeah, and so this was like a lot of the case that he makes in his book was like, how did we outcompete Neanderthals? And Neanderthals weren't able to organize in the same numbers that we were. And the speculation is maybe it's because of these subjective beliefs. But then we also have all these other evolved cognitive biases, which are that we have theory of mind, and understanding that other things have a mind, and we try to test for that in other animals as well. And there's not a lot of animals showing a lot of great like theory of mind type stuff, and even understanding that they're looking at themselves in the mirror or whatever. And so this is really beneficial if you know something has a mind, and if you know something has an intent and agency. This is really beneficial if an organism knows like a predator or prey has a mind and an agency of its own, and if you're able to put yourself in its shoes, you can anticipate moves, and then in a social species like us, the same thing. If you can put yourself in another person's shoes and then imagine them imagining themselves in your shoes, these are cognitive features that were selected for, so much so that we overshoot it. So we tend to anthropomorphize even inanimate objects and things, and they make
Think about Wilson in Castaway.
Exactly. And we also, the same thing for faces, recognizing faces. If you look at in a bush to know if there's like a face of an animal rather than just like a random
Clouds.
pattern is so beneficial that it's not that big of a cost to perceive shapes in clouds and be wrong. That's not a big deal. But if you don't notice that there's a face and a mind and intention in a bush, it might eat you. And so it's to that better safe than sorry, erring toward the side of caution. It's so useful to imagine a mind and agency that we projected onto other things. But much of human history, it seems like hunter-gatherer tribes today have a lot of animism where there's a tree god and a cat god and there's a god for everything.
The Greeks and the Romans
We had a lot more of that. Yeah, that was like polytheism, which is a little bit different than like animism, which is like a nice way of, you have these archetypes of the perfect tree, or
always thought of them as being like in relationship to what their relationship with nature was, right?
Exactly. And
the more hunter-gatherer people had this closer, more reliant relationship on their environment. And once you start the agrarian...
building cities and having agriculture and accruing, and then now suddenly status becomes a much bigger deal once you can suddenly start accruing a lot more resources and owning more things and having suddenly you can store enough food for thousands of people, and someone else that doesn't have that many assets might not be as valuable as a mate or or as a friend or whatever. And so then once we started perceiving the status a little bit more, you see it go more and more into these monocultures where we tend to perceive single God, but at the same time, but it's all, a lot of the same features are still where you're over perceiving them. But now it's, instead of appreciating that there's a God for everything, now it's just, I bet there's a God it's just like me, only more like me. Just like
I remember
just
the
a
name
little
of the
bit
Greek
better
philosopher, but he said the god of a fish is a fish.
Yeah.
I can't remember his name at the moment, but with monotheism, it really becomes, to me, a thing that starts being almost inseparable from natural philosophy at a certain point, because everything is being, but the way that you examine it and your ability to ask questions and answer them is very different under those two frameworks. One thing that was there ever a point that you found yourself believing in what your parents were teaching you as a kid, or were you always questioning it?
Yeah, no. So I was always questioning it, but I realized, like, I basically, when I remember, like, still, like, sincerely praying as a child and stuff. It was like,
but maybe not sure
it was, but really, is this a thing? And then, and it's funny because I have as an adult, I actually have a appreciation for a lot of the intricacies of how, like, religions and spirituality evolved, and a lot of the ways in which it has been beneficial to a lot of people through time.
Yeah.
But there's definitely pros and cons. But yeah, I remember at that same time when I was like 9, I realized, oh, this is not like a thing. This is so I was like,
You weren't
so I
really
was like,
allowed to
there is
question.
not no, and it was like, it was. I didn't even know that there was like such a thing as being agnostic or atheist. Like as far as I knew, everyone, every single person in the world except me believed in this and these stories. And
You've been
it's
watching
got,
Pluribus?
I have been actually. That
Because
show's
I mean,
fantastic.
it reminds me of that scenario where it's like you feel like so alone,
Yeah.
and everybody is in on this thing that you don't understand.
And it was really, it messed me up.
It sounds very alien.
It was so alienating. And so then I didn't want to do anything conventional. And so this was like in the summer between 4th and 5th grade, I remember I stopped believing there was a God. I was like, nope, there's no God. And then I have more nuanced ideas now, but when I was 9.
Yeah.
And then I realized I wanted to be a stand-up comedian. And then that was like, it was weird because I didn't tell anyone because like my very responsible, pragmatic parents, I felt like
Well, I told them they'd try to stop you.
that's the way I felt. That's unfair to
Right.
them, but
Well,
that's how it felt in my And rightfully, if anyone finds out you're a comic now, people are like, hey, tell me a joke or whatever. I knew that there'd be an expectation, or I was worried people would make fun of me for wanting to be a stand-up or whatever, and so it was like my biggest secret that I had. And
I can relate to that, to be honest. I feel like I carried a similar feeling around all through parenthood, where it was like I couldn't tell anybody that's really what I felt was right for me, because I had to be a responsible parent. But it was like in my heart, I was like, I know one day. And I used to tell myself, oh, it's really rare for young comedians to have anything interesting to say. So I'll just do it when I'm older, is what I would tell myself. But it was like this secret that I kept to myself. And I've loved comedy since I was very young. But yeah, really, I feel you on that one, man. So, what was that like all through school? Because it seems to me like you were probably still like the class clown.
No, actually, I wasn't a class clown. I was maybe in like math classes where I was like, because then it was like
where the water when you were the water bottle in the airport.
Yeah, because there was like just nothing. You know, if I was like sleeping in class or whatever, and a teacher would call on me to wake me up or to catch me like not paying attention, I could just easily, I knew the answer, I could explain it, I could like oftentimes explain it, sometimes even like better than the teacher, because it's a lot of times
you were on the softball field, not in the mailroom.
Yeah, and it's also there's some research that shows the best teachers of, say, like 5th grade math are like 7th graders, because they're like a couple years ahead, but they still remember what it was like to learn that. So it's not like there wasn't anything like special about me. It was just I was very comfortable in that space. And so because I was comfortable, maybe I would be more of a goofball. And so I do remember people thinking like I was funny, and like bullies knew I was funny too, and like that it was like my self-defense a little bit. Yeah. Like they had to be careful because they might want to bully me, but they're going to end up with like a new nickname or something like that if they do. And so it's not, but I wasn't like I wouldn't consider myself a class clown. I was like really back of the room, very quiet, and I really kept it to myself. But my core group of friends, I'd be the funny one. Yeah.
Did you find yourself like struggling with anxiety or depression?
Oh yeah,
like that a lot.
Depression.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like you already felt very alienated just by who you thought you were versus everybody that you were around.
Yeah. And by the way, like none of this is. I'm 45. I don't care at this point. Like
No,
I'm
but I
over,
think-
but it's to the extent. I also teasing apart all these subtle little details that shape us in life histories and stuff.
Yeah.
But I just don't want to be like, oh, poor me.
No, I'm not gonna get the Freud. I'm not getting the Freud doll
yeah,
out. I do have him hanging out over there, but
oh, nice. But yeah, absolutely. I remember, and then another thing happened, which was like the only adult that I respected. This like doctor. My mom worked at a clinic, and there's this doctor. Dean was the name, family friend, and he just had a like great way of like relating to me, and I felt like buddies with him or whatever. He killed himself when I was like at that same age, and it also got in my head. I was like, I get it. That was I remember taking it really hard, and then I remember being like, I get it. Yeah, what is the point of any of this? And so it was like, and then I had these dreams of becoming a comedian. Yeah, I did. That was like very existential, crisis-y type stuff, and I'm like clinically diagnosed as bipolar now, but I think it might have been some of that genetic, but I think it may have just been some of like my early development where it was like gravitating to these extremes so much where I was just like, I felt like suicidal like every day, and the only thing that I could do that would keep me going was these dreams of being a famous stand-up comedian and everything. And it was funny is actually like when I caught breaks as a comedian, I was like, that was everything I tortured myself over for the last 15 years or whatever.
Yeah,
And
it's weird, man. Like when you get those like those personal victories, and you've built them up so much, and I don't want to say they lose meaning, but it's really hard to stay present in them.
Yeah, it's
sometimes.
also more like I remember in Boston, I was pretty popular when I moved to Boston. I was getting to be.
Did you move high school?
No, I wanted to, and I kept on. Oh, I'm gonna save up some money, then I'm gonna move. But I had gotten into drinking at that time and spent all my money partying because then I was starting to become popular for the first time in my life, and that was, oh my gosh, I get to be popular, and I remember that being like really meaningful to me to get to be like the funny guy at parties or whatever, and alcohol loosened up my shyness and everything, and so
liquid courage,
and I was like so scared of girls. Oh my god, I was so insecure.
I'm still scared of them.
Oh yeah, and when you get regularly picked on for how you look or whatever, and for me it was like being freakishly skinny. I was like legitimately the skinniest. That ages very well. Again, I'm not complaining, but it shaped me. And
by the way, I just want to say you don't have a poor pitiful me tone about any of this. So you're good. But I do think it's interesting to talk about this stuff.
Well, the point I was going to like when I remember getting to Boston, and I'm grateful for starting in Boston and all the friends that I made there, and few people get to have such fortunate experiences as myself. But I just remember like when I actually got to be cool. Oh, I'm cool. I remember being like, oh, so fucking stupid. Like, why the fuck did I care? Like, this is what I was torturing myself over. It's great to have friends and be social, but like a need to like be the fucking cool guy or whatever, it's just like embarrassing.
Yeah, no, I can't relate to that feel. Like, cause I was always, so my first job was at a concert venue where I was a fucking like stagehand or the dude like that put the flyers on people's cars. I was 14, 15 years old.
Yeah.
He would send me into the competitors' parking lots because I wouldn't go to jail.
Yeah.
But my point is I was always surrounded by those people, and I liked being like in the corner and being around it all. Being in that world. But I never wanted to be the guy with all the spotlight. And so for me, I think as I've just over the last couple of years where I've really started to pursue what I want to do with my life, I was fortunate enough to know that it was more about like connecting with the right people and making friends. And I have a great group of people in my life that I love and have spent years developing really strong friendships with. But not a lot of them I still feel different than a lot of them. You know what I mean? And then I found as I've gotten more into comedy and doing the podcast and back into the world where I was as a teenager, it's, I'm like with my people again. And not to talk shit about any of my friends, but a lot of them work 9 to 5s. They can function in society in a way that I've never really been able to.
Yeah.
And I had to force myself to for a really long time. And what I'm hearing with you is like your drive to break out of being alone was maybe admittedly you say like maybe misguided, but it was like along the way you figured it out. That's not what's important. Like what I'm thinking about is like, it was glamorous to you in your brain for reasons that you didn't know. It was like, I don't want to be alone. You thought at the time, being admired, being popular, those are the only ways you knew to not be feeling so fucking alone. And then, but once you got into the Boston scene, I feel like that's when you realize the fame and the fortune, whatever, that's not what matters. But now I've surrounded myself with people that are like me.
Yeah, absolutely. It's whenever I can relate, and that's actually why I like interviewing scientists is when, so then when I started, that was the first time, I really related to comedians' minds a lot. And then when I stumbled on the kind of idea and hobby of going, because I was always reading pop science books and stuff. And once I started interviewing people, I was so scared and out of my comfort zone at the time. But like after I got past that, it's like when I talk with scientists, it's like a relief. It's like oxygen. This is someone that understands how I think about which is like figuring out the mechanisms that drive.
It's like one of those other
existence
personalities. They're one of those other layers of your personality.
It really is, and and I don't think it's a capacity or capability thing. I think it's more of a willingness thing with people. I think that anyone could learn any aspect of science that they wanted to put time into.
But I think that's true for a lot of things, but wanting to being
driven and having that curiosity, it can be really hard. And I see and I know I'll try to be like, oftentimes I'll be in a social situation and I'll try to, but I still don't talk that much. I'll try to drop like some little bit of science knowledge about a cognitive bias or something like that that is extremely applicable to like the specific situation that we are in. I know this is interesting and it's entertaining if you bring any willingness, but like I'll just see people's eyes glaze over or whatever, or confused, or like, why are we talking about this?
That hasn't happened here.
No, it hasn't happened. But it's so it definitely makes me feel like an alien a lot of times in this world where it's like, oh man, a lot of people just can't relate to, and there is like a serious scientific literacy issue. And I don't care if someone doesn't know this stuff, but like you like these like negative reactions of just if you're hearing something that might be a little different from your own beliefs or something like that, you see these like self-defenses and stuff go up. And I like people like try to call like science boring and stuff too, and I get it can be really tedious, and It's certainly
baseball.
That's the thing. It's like, okay, so what are humans excited about? The most excited you'll see them is when they get together on Sunday and watch a bunch of dudes try to move a ball around from one end of a field to another field, throwing it, running with it. Sometimes they kick it too, and they do this in roughly the same way. Oh, the same way you've seen them do this thousands upon thousands of times before.
Yeah, it's all from a book.
And you're doing this.
They're all doing it from a book.
Yeah. But you're watching this over 3 hours. You're watching this thing. And then, like, afterwards, you excitedly watch another 3 hours of this, like, ball moving about. And then after that, another 3 hours. You're going to. And then there's commentary for an hour afterwards, like a debrief. Let's talk about what we just saw there.
What amazes me about ESPN is they've been able to create like a 24-hour news cycle around just sports. Like they pretend that sports is the whole world, and they're just covering that world.
Yeah.
It blows my mind.
And people can get statistical thinking when it's about their sports team or gambling or whatever. So people have the capabilities. Some people sound like geniuses if they were articulating any other subject as well as they're like talking about their local team or whatever. And this is, they're imagining, oh my gosh, they have mirror neurons feeling like it's them catching the ball in the end zone. And oh my goodness. And this is so exciting. This thing, then there's like a talk about it like an hour beforehand, like who's going to win this and all that. And then at the end of this 11 hours that you get together and do this, then whichever teams lost that week, their state will have higher domestic abuse rates that week. That's how much people care about this fucking ball moving game. I get it.
Sunday is one of the highest domestic abuse of the year. Like, it's crazy.
And so, and I could tell, like, your average person be like, imagine interrupting that and being like, hey, does anyone want to watch a 10-minute YouTube video with incredible effects that shows the origins of the universe and how all of this came into being and how we know it? And they'd be like, that's boring. They would not have the time for that 10-minute. You can literally learn about all of the existence that got us here. And no, that would be a boring 10 minutes. And you don't have to pick one or the other. You can have your football. And
like,
we can do it on another day. How about another day? Can I sit you down for 10 minutes to see Morgan Freeman fucking narrating the best fucking CGI of understanding how a sun forms? And it's incredible. There's just like a real deviation. And I get it. I get that it's such a social thing, and it's a way that people connect around, can connect at all ages, and root for your home team and be enthusiastic. I think that it's lovely that people find ways to gather and get excited about things. You could make this same argument about, I could have made that same argument about a music festival or something. Oh, it's just a guy playing a thing.
Right, whatever.
I get it.
It's just a guy fucking talking into a microphone for an hour.
You could make anything boring if you wanted to.
Yeah.
But the crazy thing to me is I get why people like football, and I appreciate it more as an adult too than I used to. And I'm happy now, like, for my family when the Packers win, because I know they're happy and everything. But the reason why I can appreciate that is because it's so fucking predictable. It's just so predictable. And there's
Yeah.
nothing inherently good about football. It's just like if you go to Australia, they're doing the same thing with rugby, or in other places it's soccer. So there's nothing like inherently, yes, we've reached the pinnacle of this objectively good sport. Like people that are really into football would perhaps find a game of cricket to be as boring as I just
Well, and I
described
don't like
football.
football. I like
being.
baseball.
Yeah,
One of the things about baseball, everybody says baseball is boring, and until suddenly it isn't.
yeah.
But I think science is like that too.
Yeah.
Because science, it really is pretty fucking boring.
If
down
you're
in the trenches doing
down
the
in the
work
trenches, for sure. And
until
it can
there's
take
a big
little
discovery, and then suddenly it's not boring anymore.
I think some of it is self-defense stuff. I think some of it is insecurities and stuff where it's like I have this idea of like why people groan at puns. I'm not a pun guy myself, but I appreciate a good pun here and there. But I'm not like I'm not as good of an improviser. I'm not like as quick of a thinker as some people are. I'm like a more contemplative person. So there's trade-offs there. But I think that with puns, it sometimes takes a second to get that you missed it.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's like a way that it's like a self-conscious defense where you groan to conspicuously advertise to the social group like, hey, I did get that. I just didn't think that it was funny. You roll your eyes, but it was actually a solid joke. And I think that there's something like that with science as well.
Well,
where
I think that's true
certainly
with comedy in general. You like getting a crowd to laugh the first time of the night is like getting them to have a mini ego death.
Yeah, in a way, yeah.
You have to get them to like be like, okay, it's okay to laugh at this.
Yeah.
You don't have to pretend it's not funny. You don't have to sit there and. I think Pete Holmes is the guy that said this one time where it's like you go to perform and everybody there is like the funniest person in their friend group and they're all there. Oh, what do you got for me?
Yeah.
And I think you've avoided that with your non-traditional psychedelic show. You keep talking about how the psychedelic crowd is so great. And I think that's one of the reasons, right? They've already had their ego deaths, man.
Yeah. Yeah. It's also just I'm trying to develop new styles, and so a lot of the stuff, especially of the show Stand Up Science, that I did that was my main thing before COVID, and I've like reformatted it, and I'm bringing that back next year, but with different themes. And so it used to be just like random two different scientists in every city that I went to, and it was like half comedy and half science, and two different things. And this is more like me doing a 45-minute science-inspired philosophical comedy set, but it's definitely, there's a lot more, it's heavier, it's more information dense than could teeter toward the like more funny talk thing. And then I have a panel conversation with scientists afterwards, and I select based on fields that are relevant to the subject matter. And then it's more sciencey, it's more informative. The stand-up part is more informative than a regular stand-up comedy, and then the panel is funnier than a regular science panel or something. Yeah. So it's meant to be like 50% science, 50% comedy. And so it's always like some people show up expecting it to be a little more funny or whatever. And then it can go both ways too. Sometimes like the psychedelic show like that you saw last night, that's me doing more funny stories. Then I took some questions, so I got into some more information type stuff. Yeah. But sometimes if I just am like, because some people know that I've sometimes integrated a bunch of science into my shows, so sometimes if I'm just doing comedy, people are like, oh, I brought some friends because of the information and stuff, you know. So I'm always trying to find that balance. So hopefully after my specials come out and more people kind of know who I am and have a better idea of what to expect. These psychedelic specials are meant to be a proof of concept for a new kind of style that then I want to apply to different science topics. And so hopefully people know and understand, because I think that stand-up comedy can be, for myself, a little limiting in terms of what I care about, which is my favorite sound to hear is when getting laughs and stuff. That's great, and like love getting a big laugh, but it doesn't. I don't think it inspires me as much as it does a lot of people. My favorite sound is when I hear someone go, "Huh."
Yeah.
I know they just realized something about life that like connected a bunch of things in this way. Huh. And that's like really special to me. If I can get more of those, and I don't know how to make it, but then because of it's a comedy show, people are used to like hearing laughter. So as a comedian, it's always the hard parts being on stage, getting. It's been like 3 minutes of me not even intending to have a laugh, not even trying for a laugh.
Well, that was one thing I noticed about something you have heard you talk about in the past was like you used to be really focused on like laughs per minute, stuff like that. And then I noticed last night, like you didn't even go for like an opening joke, like most comics would do to just break the ice or whatever. Like it was very clear to me that you were like, I'm just gonna have a conversation with you guys. We're gonna ease into this and we're gonna have a good time. And it was fucking great.
Thanks.
I loved it.
Yeah.
But it also, it was very non-traditional in the sense that, just like what you were saying, it was, I noticed that. Can you talk a little bit about, and then I want to go back again for a minute, but can you talk a little bit about that shift that you had from trying to just get all these laughs per minute to relaxing into this new style that you do?
So when I started wanting to, so it actually didn't even occur to me to put put any of the science concepts into my act ever. I was just reading science books as a hobby. It's so weird. The thought never even crossed my mind. Like, oh, maybe I could put some of these concepts in my comedy, until I like caught the break. I had like a 5-year plan when I started comedy, and I accomplished those goals that I had. I exceeded them. And then I was, what do I want to do with this? And also I wanted to think about performing internationally more, where there's like a lot more like themed shows. And I was like, yeah, maybe I'll try doing some science jokes. And at first it was just like, oh, there's all these funny animal mating behavior things. So that's like an easy transition from dick jokes to like science-y dick jokes.
Yeah.
And
Anatomy is always hilarious.
Yeah. And which maybe I did a special mating season on Netflix, but maybe I should do another mating one sometimes, because it actually is. It's just like all the gender war, culture war shit got so annoying that I'm like, I don't want to.
Yeah.
I don't. We need to have one day a month where we have the great gender war, and like we all yell about dicks and vaginas and who can have them and what we do with them, and then the rest of the month we just get to move on with our lives and do the other things that need to be done in life. But
I mostly just moved on.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know.
But there's. But anyhow, but there's so much there's so much great, but there is great stuff in there with just the way insects mate and stuff. It's just wildly fascinating.
Yeah.
But so that seemed like a little inroad, and so then I'd try out like a couple jokes, and then I realized to set up this concept for this joke, it's just taking too long to get those laughs per minute. So now it needs to be like a themed show because it needs to have a through line. Because if I'm going to put the work into setting it up, then there needs to be like more payoffs. So instead, the way that I think about it is, how do I create a lens? How do I have, this is my thesis kind of statement, and I'll explain that, and that's going to take a little more effort and attention span. But then once we have that new lens created, now we get to play in my world that I've created for you. Yeah.
It's beautiful. It's a beautiful world you've created.
Yeah, thanks.
So I want to go back for a minute because you're holding on to this secret for a decade that you want to be a stand-up comic. Are you writing?
When I was a teenager, I started writing, yeah. Yeah, I would say, because I don't think I started in 8th grade. No, I think I was in high school, so I think I was like 14, I think. Might have been a little earlier than that. But I remember writing a lot when I was 14.
Was that like therapeutic for you?
Yeah, and it was inspiring, and I felt like, oh, maybe I'm onto something here. And yeah, it was nice. But yeah, I liked it. So it's another reason why I took off quickly when I started, because I had already, not only had I been studying comedy for, 14 years, like watching stand-up comedy, like basically every day, like watching, like at least a late night set or something.
I never understand comics that don't watch a lot of comedy.
I don't anymore, but I did for a long time.
Yeah, I can see that. It becomes, once you're like in the world, it becomes this thing where it's like, I'm going to work at home on a Saturday night. But not being fans of other comedians, I think, is something that baffles me, because I think that like loving comedy enough to do it, like, how are you not loving what other comedians have done at some point in your life? Like I said, I get, once you get to a certain point, like, it's kind of like after college, people stop listening to new music a lot of the time too. I'm not one of those people, but it's, you like what you like, and in certain, and there's definitely aspects of my life where that's true, just not with music or whatever. But one thing that struck me about everything that you've been saying is that you started with a little bit of animosity towards the ritual, the group think,
yes,
and now it's become more of something that you really want to understand.
Yeah, so I really, something that I really like, I've been tickled by and thinking a lot about recently is there's these Mantawi people in Indonesia. This is just like an example of how I like thinking through these things. So these Mantawi people in Indonesia, they have this ghost crocodile that sometimes attacks, and it will make you sick. They have a waterborne virus, but what happens is the shaman comes in.
Animus that you're.
Yeah, animism, where shaman comes in, tells them, "Hey, ghost crocodile got you. There's herbal, this and that, rest, some chants," and they usually figure out that what did you do wrong to where the ghost crocodile is like punishing you or your family for this, and it's usually you figure out that it has, because they're like a very egalitarian, and one of the ways in which you sort of police that is like having rituals like this, where it's like, hey, have you been too greedy? Maybe the ghost crocodile can't. I've noticed like oftentimes when you're like carving a boar, like you often take the good slice for yourself if you've been a little stingy or whatever. And I go, oh yeah, I guess I have maybe sometimes been a little stingy. And so then that family makes an offering to the community that was so sorry. And then the community goes, oh, it's okay. And then they all get together and do a ceremonial like healing dance together. Now, that all might seem crazy to an outsider if you have the objective reality that what happens is you just got a water virus. But now let's break down all of the mechanisms and why. And so first off, there's certain beliefs that are prone to take off, but also there would have been other beliefs that were like spitball and trial and error. And so beliefs, there's cultural evolution as well in terms of some beliefs get selected for more than others, and sometimes it's because they serve these hidden utilities that you may not be privy to, but it just works. And so imagine a world before knowledge of infectious disease and modern medicine and a knowledge of these germs. If you, like even today, you try to explain to a hunter-gatherer, like, hey, this water, there's these worms in it, and they're like, what are you talking about? I can't see the worms. You're crazy. It's very counterintuitive.
Yeah.
And so first of all, the ghost crocodile, so they're learning there's some association with water, had something to do with water. Crocodile is this archetypal like water threat, and it's very salient. It's an easy story to tell. A big crocodile is a very captivating, scary thing. And then what it allows, so they're tuning in a little bit, getting a little closer than, say, a ghost bird or something like that. And so then the shaman was like often a community leader, and so it will be like, hey, we should stay away from this particular water source for a while. There's a ghost crocodile around there. That's pretty useful to switch up your water source if you just had that illness. And then you can pick up on patterns of when the ghost crocodile seems to come out the most. Turns out after a heavy rain is when the ghost crocodile gets really active. They don't necessarily know it's because that's when dung and stuff from animal feces gets in waterways, and you're going to be more prone to pathogens. But you can pick up on like good and bad times to avoid the ghost crocodile, areas where the ghost crocodile tends to hang out more. And then you have, so whatever herbal remedies or whatever may or may not do something. I haven't looked too terribly into the idea, but anything that can make you psychologically feel as if everything's okay is going to be better for healing. This is,
I believe it's going to work.
And the mechanism of action is that stress mobilizes energy away from long-term things for in the moment, to get you out of danger, to help you like hunt the thing or whatever else. It mobilizes energy to the muscles. So it takes things away from anything that isn't necessary in that moment, being like immune system, digestion.
Well, and this is why they do double-blind studies with drugs, right? Because they give one group the drug and they give one group a placebo pill.
Yeah.
So everybody thinks they're getting the drug.
Yeah. And then there's different things that add to a placebo effect. How big is the pill? Is the person giving it to you wearing a lab coat and stuff? And is it invasive? Did you have to go through a whole thing for it? There was a heart valve years ago where they didn't know if it was working or better than chance, and so they had 3 groups. They had a no treatment group, a surgery group, and then they had another group of people where they cut people open, put them under, and just stitched them back up, so they thought that they got a surgery. And that group actually did the best because of the
I've never heard of
invasiveness.
that.
Yeah,
That's wild.
and and because then you think that you believe that I got the thing that fixed me, and this is because the immune system is, and also have to be careful with this because another thing to explain is there's reasons why vaccines are special and important in our modern world because we are exposed to way more pathogens because of the human impacts on the environment than we ever have in our 300,000 years. There are modern problems that require modern solutions, and this is what we've figured out how we can help guide the immune system to give it a heads up. It's like, it's funny all the conspiracy people that think they're breaking through the matrix. The closest to breaking the matrix is giving the cheat code to your immune system for a defense for a potential threat that it's going to have.
Hank Green likes to say that humans are just trying to solve problems, and then when they do, they create other problems. Yeah.
And there's always going to be
that's
new
what
problems
human nature really
showing
is,
up.
kind of.
Yeah, Hank Green's great. But so if and so then the parasympathetic response system that re-regulates everything gets the immune functioning back going again. So your immune system uses an incredible amount of energy. So if you relax, if you aren't stressed out, that allows for more energy for your immune system to do its work, essentially. So this is the kind of brass tacks, like simple mechanism. There's a little more going on.
Physiological reasons.
Yeah.
Is in effect.
They used to prescribe Osablep, placebo backwards. And then that was eventually considered like unethical, but you'd give it to people and it cured a lot of things. And then doctors could be like, "Oh, you got Osablep."
Well, and that's why all this pseudoscience, people do think it works because
of course it worked for me. Yeah. My mom was always into every like little homeopathic this and that thing. My whole life, I've seen that stuff, and so placebo. So a shaman coming in doing these rituals that leads to a sense of comfort and relief. Now, let's talk about why the blaming. So this is rather random. They did not do anything to deserve a waterborne virus.
Yeah, they didn't take extra bore. That was bullshit.
Yeah. But it's interesting. So what that does do is it preserves this idea of. So we have this idea of that's cognitively relaxed. I think a lot of these are outcomes of mitigating overactive chronic stress system that was built on top of we have a stress response system that was built in mammals that don't think as far ahead of things and contemplate things that aren't happening in the moment and like sweating about those things. And so we have these like ideas of a just world in our mind that if you do everything right in life, then things will go right. And because brains that tended to think that way tended to be more involved and have more confidence in life, enough so that it was, even though it was inaccurate and the world isn't that way, believing that got people where they are. And so, and then there's these like fundamental attribution differences that are also self-serving and differentiating for like in and out groups, where basically if something good happens to you, you earned it. If something bad happens to you, it's bad luck. If something bad happens to someone else, they did something wrong.
Well,
if
just
something
believing
good
that is
happens,
comforting.
if something good happens to others, they just got lucky. Self-serving, it helps prop up your ego and everything. And so then, and the downside is there's all this victim blaming and stuff that happens, and you're blaming someone inappropriately for a waterborne virus because that's soothing to others. That's right. It gets slippery, but that's one of the things that it does. And
occasionally you just have a metaphorical appendix. Like that blame may have been useful at one point.
Absolutely.
But it's no longer really useful, but it's still there.
Our brains are not at all built for the world that we built for ourselves at all. No, we have microscopes and medicine and stuff.
Our biology has not caught up to our environment.
No,
at all.
In no way.
Yeah, and I think that's where we see the rise in things like anxiety and depression and all these things that I don't want to say they didn't exist before, but they weren't as prevalent.
I think there's a lot of mismatches.
There's also a lot of we recognize it more.
We're living longer than humans had in the past too, so it might also just be an outcome of living longer and then having to think further into the future about a longer life than humans ever had to in the past. We have 45 more years than most any human in history. That's because of like child death and stuff. That's if you're gambling on it. But even still making it to adulthood, it was about 50, and now we're getting up to like 75. And so that's another 25 years longer
you have to plan for.
If you make it into adulthood. And so and
I had never really thought about it like that, but that's
so I think a lot of these features are about addressing a maladaptive stress, anxiety, depression response. That is, anxiety can be really useful in getting you to roll up your sleeves and get shit done. Depression can be really useful in helping you pump the brakes before investing the next X number of years of your life down the wrong project or whatever, and it can pump the brakes on action so that you might get a little depressed when you're feeling sick because the ghost crocodile brought malaise into the household, but depression's a great mechanism to keep you laying down. And so then a couple last little things, just because I love the intricacy of all of this. So then that the family's confessing to a thing, we're all doing something wrong once in a while, and they can study this in churches and things that have confessionals, is if you have a place to confess, to allow to drop baggage, you can demarcate those things from yourself. You can put them in the past. They aren't a part of who you are anymore. You can make amends. And if you hold on to them, they can accrue, and once they add up and you have enough of these wrongdoings, you start thinking of yourself as a bad person. And what's a bad person do? Bad things, and it becomes a self-fulfilling thing, and now you're getting more and more into antisocial and destructive behaviors because of this view that you have of yourself. Whereas having this confession where you're allowed to like make amends, hey, I'm sorry, here's an offering, is a way, can be really therapeutic and can demarcate and give you a fresh start. And then lastly, that the rest of the community, because of, they got attacked for not sharing or whatever, that's as victim blaming is a bummer, but
accountability.
It's more that
it's fake.
It's more it negates worry. So otherwise, if you can just randomly be attacked by the ghost crocodile anytime for any reason, that's a nightmarish world that you're living in. But because someone did something wrong, then all you have to do is do the right things, and then it won't get you. And
that brings a level of understanding why religion can be so comforting to people that I don't know that I've ever, and this is not like new stuff to me, but thinking about it that way is.
It's
one of those,
yeah, there you go.
For sure, man.
Yeah. And then the community comes and they do a dance. They say, we forgive you, and we're going to do a dance to aid in your healing and this ceremonial thing. And that's bringing people together and playfully engaging with potential threats is a comforting way to address threats. Halloween was originated as you're going into winter, the deadliest time of year, and you are confronting ideas of death and ghosts and things, and
Easter
spirits,
was the spring
and
equinox, and
right.
The Constantine adopted like all of these pagan traditions and integrated them into Christianity, and it's wild, like how much
they've changed from their past utility. This happens a lot, where it's like a lot of early astrology was like great, like navigational tools and things like that. Now we have GPSs. It didn't make astrology go away, and some people it made it because we still had an evolved preference to making sense of the stars and patterns, because that was very adaptive in the past. And now that isn't, the rubber's not meeting the road anymore. So you still have that feeling, but it doesn't have the same utility in which it originated from. And so it almost makes it seem more magical to a person, because it's like it's there, you can feel it, but you don't even know why you're feeling it. And
it's like we had to create. I think about like phone numbers. Like, how many phone numbers did you have memorized as a kid versus now? And it creates this. The sense of wonderment isn't there, but the excitement of getting somebody's phone numbers.
Yeah.
Whereas, like, you could just look them up on Instagram or Facebook, or like you're no more connected with somebody by having their phone number. Like, they can block your phone number just as easy as they can block you on social media. There is this, like, getting a phone number still feels like a level of intimacy that isn't following each other on social media, when really the connection is exactly the same. It's no different than, but because we used to have to, like, not only did we get phone numbers and that was the only thing that mattered, we had to memorize those numbers if we wanted. Like, I knew all my best friends' phone numbers. Man, so there's so much. I feel like we could just literally talk for hours and hours, but there's a couple of things I know we have in common that I want to touch on before we exhaust everybody from listening anymore. And one of those,
they're on the edge of their seats.
I hope so. I know I am. I keep having to scoot back just to not fuck up my back. But I know we've both been to the Creation Museum.
Oh yeah.
And I went there like very intentionally, like to study it as a student of museum studies.
See the guy like riding the dinosaur and stuff.
Yeah,
it's awesome. Humans and dinosaurs. And of course, we were riding them. And
what strikes me though that's always struck me about this place, and I'm wondering what you think of this, is like they use a lot of the same evidence to make their case that the evolutionary biologists make to make the case for evolution. Like, they have a model of Lucy right there. They don't pretend that stuff doesn't exist. They've integrated it all. And
that's what you do. You integrate it. You shift the goalposts and everything. Everything. It's instead of innocent until proven guilty, it's beliefs rather than knowledge and evidence-based systems. But religiosity is truth until proved metaphor. And then you always go, that part's a metaphor-ish thing, or here's how you twist around and make it all work. Yeah, they're trying to make I don't know, when I was there, they didn't have the Noah's Ark thing done.
They had it done when I was there.
Wow.
I've been twice. And
I got to check out the Noah's Ark.
They've gotten rid of the dinosaurs with saddles, though.
Oh yeah.
That's a trade-off. I think there was like still one triceratops in a corner that you could get on for a photo. But What was your motivation? Like, and I think we brushed on it earlier. You used to have some animosity towards groupthink, maybe rebelliousness against religion. And now it's turned into sort of more of a fascination, I would say.
Yeah, and trying to understand my one stand-up science show that I debuted this year that'll be doing next year is called Myth Understandings. So it's going back through Roman and Greek mythology up through ideas of the early ideas of Martians, for example, to all the way up to beliefs in Loch Ness Monster, Bigfoot, and folklore and stuff today, and understanding where they come from, and also like where the
I think Monsters Inc. explained Bigfoot and the Abominable Snowman pretty well, right?
Oh, really? I haven't seen it.
Oh man,
Yeah,
I know you're
I'll
a
check it
Pixar
out.
guy. You got
I am, but yeah.
definitely check out Monsters Inc.
Yeah, but then it's also with our modern world, we still need to figure out there's still some lines that need to be drawn for us to coexist in a shared objective reality, that you might want to have your story, like you might, I'm not trying to take away your ghost crocodile, and I'm sure a lot of people would laugh at the ghost crocodile and think that it's silly. I think it's beautiful. I think it's wonderful, intricate. There are a few people that appreciate that ghost crocodile belief system as much as me. However, we still need to have Bayesian processing, and when new information and evidence comes in, we need to be able to integrate that, which humans have been doing for a long time. It's just that now we have modern tools like microscopes to go, oh, there's this waterborne virus here. And that might seem crazy, but you can look through the microscope and now you can see this virus. And we can take all the time in the world to explain it to you if you don't trust us, but you're welcome to learn. And also, we're going to put some water filters in so the children and the elderly aren't getting sick from this water source. And if this is somehow, if you're taking this as an attack or an affront on your ghost crocodile story, and you want to break the microscope because the ghost crocodile is so important to you, then I say, fuck your ghost crocodile. I don't care. Like, at a certain point, if we're going to cooperate as humans in a modern world, there are modern realities and opportunities that we can't have bad actors and obstructionists stopping us from making the world a better, a safer place to be, because their beliefs, because you think you're like covered in Christ's blood or whatever and immune to everything. I get wanting to live your life believing that you're never going to get sick or whatever, but guess what? When there's ways that we've figured out to help mitigate actual pandemics, actual virologists, like, we're going to sit down and see what your understanding of virology is. And if you're saying, oh, because I'm covered in Christ's blood, I can drive on the wrong side of the road because Christ says I can drive on the wrong side
Jesus
of the road.
has the wheel.
Yeah, exactly, because Jesus has the wheel. I'm sorry, but we still need to function as a society, and your precious little individual.
They just took fluoride out of the drinking water here.
Oh yeah, it's insane, and it's fine to go and look for the Loch Ness Monster or whatever. And I think it's great that there's a couple wackadoodles out there looking for the Loch Ness Monster. I've taken a Loch Ness Monster tour, you know. What a lovely way to spend a day. It's hilarious. But you don't put the Loch Ness Monster guy in charge of oceanic research. And that's what's happening now. Because Loch Ness Monster guy is going to fire everyone that didn't believe their Loch Ness Monster story, put their friends in charge of positions they couldn't possibly understand the seriousness of because they don't have a background understanding of how any of this works. And then they're going to say, hey, everyone stop what you're doing and look for the Loch Ness Monster, because I say that I'm doing this for everyone else, but the only thing I actually care about is validating that I've been right all along while everyone said I was crazy for believing in the Loch Ness Monster. Like,
that goes back to what we were talking about at the very beginning of this.
Yeah.
Is like this refusal to admit, hey, I made a mistake. I was wrong.
yeah,
Yeah, maybe the Loch Ness Monster doesn't exist.
yeah.
Maybe the water crocodile, the ghost crocodile, brings a water virus. These are ways that we can work together.
Yeah. So we can have both. Everyone's still entitled to their belief systems, but not when you're being an obstruction. There's people that have tried to attack like weather balloons and radars and stuff because every time a hurricane comes in, psychopaths with their stupid 4chan beliefs think that the weather station made the hurricane. So they go like, I'm sorry, but you're a terrorist now. You've just committed an act of terrorism.
I think you're onto something that you might not even realize, though, with all of this, because the element that gets taken away by science is the cause. The idea that this happened for a reason that I can somehow prevent.
Yeah.
Where, not to say there is all these things that we can do with medicine to prevent these things. But at the end of the day, like, we are ultimately powerless against the forces of nature and physics.
And chaos and everything. Yeah.
That's where I feel like and I'm having this realization now, but I feel like that's where the disconnect really is.
Yeah. People like simple magic bullet answers for things, and
what you said earlier, not everybody is a scientist. Not everybody is going to have that deeper understanding.
And not everyone...
You just have to trust them.
Yeah.
That's where...
I don't want to, if I get into an elevator, I don't want to have to inspect the elevator myself.
No, but I do check the date when it was last...
But the reason why we have inspections, it wasn't like a given hotel's idea to be like, you know what, I'm going to inspect this this elevator out of the goodness of my heart and put this little thing up there. We've decided as a society that we don't want to have elevators falling randomly, and so we have guidelines in place, and we use regulation that can always be made better and more efficient and improved upon, so that I don't need to think through every elevator that I need to get in to know if it's safe or not. And that's it. At the same time, it's not anyone's right to break the elevator because they don't believe they're natural, and people should be using the stairs. And
and I'm certainly not trying to say it's right.
Yeah.
But I think there's a level of understanding I don't know that I have. Where it's like, oh, that's why they fight against this so hard. Because their idea that it happened for a reason gets taken away.
Yeah.
And that's terrifying.
I think it's a little bit. It's a little bit. Some of it is a little bit of selfishness of wanting to preserve your special sense of magic or something where you feel like you have special privileged information. Especially this is like the conspiracy.
Too,
yeah, and
sometimes.
Oh, for sure.
Probably not the ones that you've encountered, because they're the ones that are willing to like sit down and talk to you.
Yeah, I pretty randomly find people, and I don't get turned down for interviews very often. Yeah. So I don't think that I'm experiencing too many sampling errors. But yeah, can some scientists be pricks? Yes, there's pricks everywhere.
I think about this documentary called The Flock of Dodos. Have you ever seen that?
No, but I've heard of it.
And he sits down, he interviews a bunch of... He was a biologist that became a documentarian. And he goes and he interviews a bunch of scientists, biologists, and he interviews a bunch of creationists. And at the end of it, he's like, who would you rather have a cup of coffee with or a beer with? And like the creationists win by a mile.
Yeah.
But
Yeah,
I
I think that's probably some selection bias. I've
that probably
had plenty of beers with
This was also like
scientists,
15
and I've had
years
plenty
ago,
of beers with creationists, and I would much rather have a beer with scientists.
This was a long time ago,
Yeah,
too.
yeah.
I think like people have gotten a lot more divided since this was made.
Yeah.
And it was a lot more.
Yeah, no,
The point he was making was that like scientists aren't always great at selling.
Yeah. There's science communication.
A lot of the time, these are people that aren't super social. They aren't super.
Yeah, I mean,
they aren't. But I'm thinking about people that become specialists in their field. Like you think about the amount of concentration that those are typically people that just aren't the most social.
The number of threats that I got in my DMs during COVID, just because I talk with like actual virologists and epidemiologists and stuff, and it was always because I do psychedelic shows and I've been on Rogan and stuff like that. So I have people that are into conspirituality that happen to follow me because they're interested in my psychedelic stories or whatever. And so because of that, I've gotten to see a side of, I know you have love and light on your social media profile and all that, but I know who you actually are, and you're a psychopath narcissist making the world a worse place. So I think that I'm going to go to bat for scientists on this one. I would say that I would say comedians are really fun people. The psychedelic communities are really fun people, but and there's certainly like weird neurodivergent people in mathematics, and I talk with like social scientists and psychologists and stuff more, so there could be sampling things. But yeah, that's the whole thing these days is, it's cool science. Like primatology isn't cool. Looking for Bigfoot is cool. It's like, I beg to differ. I think you're a fucking dork if you're out looking for Bigfoot. I think primatology is absolutely fascinating. And if you can't understand what is fascinating about primate, like you are primate. Like it's one thing. I don't expect everyone to become a primatologist and take an interest in primatology, but don't go hunting Bigfoot and tell me like pseudoscience is like where it's all at. It's just that people want to think that they found like special treasures. And I don't think that. I think I love when I form a new connection and have an epiphany and think that I've came up with an idea on my own and I want to share it. And that is a special feeling. And it's not a special enough feeling that I'm that I'm willing to like obstruct like public health because for my ego.
I think, I guess what I was getting at was just more that if we have to trust people, and I think you hit the nail on the head when you started talking about when things started to get more and more entrenched and divided. It's
from a bunch of people trying to say that they're centrists. Well, it's an easy thing it's an easy thing for a comedian to be like, hey, both sides are crazy, right? Because then a whole audience would be like, he's not talking about us. We're the sane ones. Look at us, room of sane people. Now we can hear jokes about the others. So those crazy, dumb people out there. It's so funny. Comedians are like, people are stupid. I'll be like, yeah, people are stupid. And I go up, I'm like, hey, I hear some smart shit. People are like, fuck this. Like, they will leave. It's people's precious little fucking egos. Yeah, I don't know. It's a never-ending. It's an overly complicated issue. We really aren't built for this modern world. People aren't handling some of the advancement, and maybe much like you were saying with online bullying, I know when YouTube first came out, it was just like when some people first got the opportunity just to harass like strangers and stuff, and you could just go and yell homophobic slurs and stuff at people like all day long. You could call 1,000 people gay in a day if you were typing fast enough and finding enough videos. There's been a little less of that. There's
It's become like more
naturally
concentrated.
gotten.
They send their.
They go to Twitter for
Well,
their
and they
dumpster
have like
or X or
all
whatever.
these like parasocial groups where this person's followers will go harass this
Yeah.
other community's group of followers. It's like better and worse. But the other thing I really wanted to get into is your Meow Wolf specials.
Yeah.
Because I have actually never been to a Meow Wolf installation, but I feel like I've been to their virtual installation in Walkabout Mini Golf, which they designed from the ground up.
Where is that?
I'm going to show it to you after this. It's in here.
Oh, yeah. Oh, sweet.
Yeah, I'll drop you in there afterward. But I think they based most of it on the Denver exhibit where you filmed your specials. Beside the kind of obvious, psychedelic art, beautiful, this kind of unique thing.
What's obvious about that? People.
It's obvious. When I heard you're doing a special there, I'm like, oh, that makes total sense.
Yeah.
What was the decision making?
For the listener, I had 20 different artists contribute to the show, so that brings my psychedelic experiences to life in real time with a video jockey, Michael Strauss, who's been video jockey for a whole bunch of bands and things. So in the same way that VJs can add atmosphere to music shows, we've created kind of a new form of comedy, essentially bringing psychedelics to life in a way so that people can have a little bit of a vicarious trip of sorts. And it's a two-part thing where first one's about mushrooms and LSD and a little bit like a psychedelic 101, and then the second one's like ayahuasca, DMT, and ketamine, and like a little bit of kind of a 102. And so it's meant to be just like a fun kind of introductory vicarious trip that's accessible, that people can show their friends that are nervous about psychedelics or whatever, so people can get a sense of what the psychedelic experience is like without having done psychedelics. And of course, nothing can compare to the actual experiences themselves. Right. It's something that I think a lot of people will watch to inspire their next experiences and stuff. Yeah.
I want to back up for a second and tell everybody what Meow Wolf is.
Oh, yeah.
Because I feel
like a psychedelic Disney World.
We're
like
making all these assumptions because we both know what it is, but no, Meow Wolf they're an art collective.
Yeah.
They have installations in Denver, Houston, Dallas, somewhere. I feel like there's one in Texas.
First one was in Santa Fe. Then they have my favorite one's in Vegas. Actually, it's like a really good take on capitalism in a fun way, and then there's Houston, Grapevine, Texas, which I think is a smaller one. They are building one in New York and LA.
And it's like a 3D interactive art.
Yeah, it's like a 4-story psychedelic kind of Disney World of sorts, of like you go around and you can like also solve these puzzles and stuff like that as you go through, and like various scavenger hunts, or you can just walk around and appreciate all of the, 3-dimensional like trippy art. And it's, what's cool is like you go there and you see like kids walking around, and like kids fucking get it immediately. It's like this alien world, and they totally get it. But adults can really appreciate it too. It's not.
I've always
said like a little kiddie type.
Just turn you into a kid again.
Yeah. I think that I think that we'll show that in the future with MRIs once we can create like recordings of some of the visual inner worlds, I would guess that they would match things that match babies a lot. I think some of the fractals and geometry is just like the original natural state of
DMC
sensory
is what our
information.
brain is flooded with at birth.
Yeah, yeah,
And death.
yeah.
So,
Would say.
What did you think was unique or special about Meow Wolf, or has anybody ever done anything like this with them before?
It's the first special ever recorded at a Meow Wolf. I had to put together some connections and stuff, and it was really cool. And it was just like the perfect fit. They got a trippy vibe, and it was for a psychedelic show. It was hard to do anything else, do it anywhere else. It was just the perfect
Yeah,
place.
I feel like once the idea was there, it was like that was where it had to be.
Yeah,
'Cause,
absolutely.
like I said, the moment I heard it, I was like, that makes so much fucking sense. Sounds like you have a lot more in the pipeline, too. Do you want to tell everybody what else you have going on in 2026? Because it sounds like you have a lot coming.
Yeah, so I have these stand-up science shows. I might change the name a little bit, but I have this Myth Understanding show that there's like we just did an IMAX version, but we have a planetarium and dome version ready to go as well. Since the Sphere happened, now like there's other smaller domes popping up in different places.
You have a planetarium IMAX here, too.
Oh, nice. Yeah, I'll have to come back. There's planetariums everywhere, and they're and no one goes to them anymore.
Yeah.
So they're like actually a really as someone who was like really inspired by planetariums when I first smoked weed at high school and everything, but
Laser
then
Floyd.
to eventually get really into astronomy and learning about the universe. I think they're like so cool and underappreciated. And another thing that's associated with kids, it's like
there's actually amazing planetariums in here that I use all the time.
Really?
Yeah, man,
Very
I'll
cool.
just lay on my back and learn. Like they have presentations where they talk about all the constellations and like you have a traditional one, but they also just have you can look and stargaze.
And nice. Yeah, I'm doing like a little run through of a show about AI for this. There's this Cooperative Futures Institute using cooperation research to think about AI alignment problems and the new ways to think about building new ways of thinking about AI and how to build AI based on
I think
cooperative
decentralization is like the only answer
models.
at this point.
Yeah. And there's a lot of like hierarchical oligarchy bros in charge right now, and so there needs to be a vibe shift, I think. But
The like gambling of our entire society, like
yeah,
the casinification of our entire existence is real, man. It's crazy.
Yeah, it really is. And then I have a thing about like using examples of like ants and bees and other social animals to think about how structures and like civilizations emerge from complexity and from rather than thinking about things in a top-down way. That's how we're used to thinking about things, and thinking about how from the bottom up, how some of these like belief systems like the manta-ray or whatever coordinate, how this happens, and how do people naturally find themselves coordinating and problem solving.
Like not eating shellfish or pork or things like that.
Yeah.
They're very, very similar to what you're.
Yeah. It's like the Hindus and the sacred cows and stuff.
Yeah.
It's I don't think it's any mistake that the people with they have different breeds of cows there that aren't as good for butchering, and especially something that was incredibly useful. Basically, their tractors and stuff and tractor factories to have things in place to a lot of these belief structures are ways of helping the prefrontal cortex to do the hard thing in the moment for long-term planning and behaviors. To a lot of it's about hedonism, and so a lot of it's like, how do we engage with better self-control, and your guess is as good as mine, but a lot of these structures attempt to solve those issues. So yeah, those are, I think, the three main shows. Oh,
And your
I
podcast
almost debuted one in a couple days in Pensacola. Actually, speaking of placebo, I almost debuted a stand-up science show about the placebo effect. I decided it wasn't quite ready yet, so I'm launching it next year. So that's 4 or 5 different shows that I have going next year, so it'll be fun. So once the specials come out, like, I'm very much my Here We Are podcast, but I'm also making sure that people know that I do other things other than just talk about psychedelics, so I don't get pigeonholed too much, but also so people have reasonable expectations when they come to see me, because I'll probably tour with a psychedelic show and a science show in each city that I go, so the psychedelic enthusiasts can be satiated, because otherwise if they show up to my science shows and then they just want to ask about drugs, and we're talking about hyenas right now. How do hyenas trip, bro? Come on, there's other subjects.
I mean, that's one thing. I love psychedelics. I don't love drug culture. All that much.
I like a good festival and stuff.
Sure, but
yeah,
when
some
it
of the
becomes
everything. I totally get it. Yeah.
Shane, it's been fucking awesome having you here. There's one last thing I want to ask you about. Van life for tall people.
Yeah, I have a little bed extension. But
any other tips? Any other, as someone not quite as tall, but as a fellow tall person that is interested in living on the road.
yeah. You need something tall. I think sprinters are the tallest ones that there are, and it's just tall enough for me. It's the only time that being tall is a advantage in life in a lot of ways. Van life, I wish I could shrink 2 inches every time that I walk around my van. And
that reminds me of something else Hank Green says a lot, is like, humans, we would just be, if we could just shrink. Humans could just be like 3 feet tall instead of 6 feet tall.
Yeah,
we
that's
would be
funny.
Perfect.
Yeah, wouldn't need as many resources and such. Yeah,
man, Shane, this has been fucking awesome.
Yeah,
thank you so much for doing it.
Appreciate it.
Hope you enjoyed my talk with Shane Mauss. Make sure to check out his new special coming out February 18th on his website. There's a link in the description. It was filmed at Meow Wolf in Denver, and after the interview, we had a chance to let him check out the Meow Wolf golf course that they did for Walkabout mini golf in virtual reality. It's actually based on the Denver exhibit that he filmed his specials in. I think it was a really, really great afternoon. Make sure to check out that Meow Wolf course if that's your thing. It's in VR on Walkabout mini golf, one of my favorite games to play in there. They designed the whole course from top to bottom. Just a reminder that this podcast is produced in everything from start to finish by me. I do everything from the booking to the recording, editing, producing, distribution, marketing, everything. And in order to keep this going and keep it sustainable, I've launched a Patreon. There's not really any extra content. There'll be some bonus stuff here and there, but it's really just a way for you to directly support the show if you like what I'm doing. So check it out. There's a link in the description. It's patreon.com/Fedden. Thanks a lot for tuning in. We'll see you next week with Justin Long, a really old friend of mine who played in a band called No Address, plays with the Petty Nicks Experience, and does a bunch of other stuff, does some artist development, and he was a producer. And we got into a big conversation about the old Tallahassee scene and the toxicity of major labels and how they treated bands in the early 2000s. Just great talk. You get to know both of us a lot better. I hope you enjoy it. Hit that subscribe button.